Hey everyone, in this video I'll be showing you a build guide for the 2024 Player's Handbook Sangromancer Wizard in Baldur's Gate 3, part of the D&D Player's Handbook 2024 All-In-One Beyond Mod, made by Yoonmoonsik. This subclass has special Sangromancy spells, which count as wizard spells that we can learn, and we also draw our power from blood, getting special Sangromancy die to fuel our abilities. What's great about this is we get some extra health, and some of our spells will be able to deal extra damage, and we can roll our Sangromancy die to deal it. Now, pretty much all classes across the board end up getting some nerf of some sort. The wizard only able to cast one spell per turn now, which is pretty rough if you're used to using haste. Now, I'll be going through all the different spells and cantrips here. I just posted a video where I broke down all the new spells included, so you can check that out if you're curious. I'm just going to keep it simple with some of the spells that we know and love already, with things like Bone Chill still being an extremely powerful spell to stop a target from receiving healing, Ray of Frost being nice because you can kite enemies around, and Mage Hand can throw healing potions and water bottles. Now, wet is not very good in this update, but it's still worth using in some situations. Friends is also nice if you're the face of the party. Now, we also get some new spells here, and we will also get our Sangromancy spells a little bit later on. I would recommend having Mage, Armor, and Shield at all times. Find Familiar for the Raven to blind enemies is nice. If you get silenced often, Ice Knife can be nice, but I prefer going with the Magic Missile. Chromatic Orb gives us elemental damage coverage, which can be nice. And then for this build, False Life makes a lot of sense. It actually has a 2d4 plus 4 temporary health now, which nice change. And Thunderwave is another good option for the pushback that it brings, which can one-shot enemies. Now, this build is a little bit tricky. I would recommend going 16 Intelligence and 16 Constitution with 14 Dexterity. We need high Constitution. Wizards have the lowest amount of health, and it really does help if we're able to up our health in some way. So going with that stat spread makes sense. Dexterity is also nerfed because the initiative die is now a D20 instead of a D4, so Dexterity is actually just okay. Not as good as it was prior to this, but we can also go with the Arcana Insight. Level 2 is when we get to take our subclass. And what's amazing about this is if you're using the Book of Wizards by Incognito Burrito, you can still use these subclasses. I also want to mention that they keep their subclass features from 2014, or the rule set that's adapted from, but with the class features of the Wizard, it gets the 2024 version. So it's kind of a cool mixture of both of these here. So pretty sweet. But the Sangromancer here. This subclass gets our Sangromancy Savant. So these spells that we get, the Sangromancy spells, count as wizard spells. We get 2 of them, and they can't be higher level 2. We do get higher ones as we continue to level up, and we can add them to our spell book. We continue to add a few more as we level up. Full-blooded, you draw power and our magic from blood. This is recommended by our Sangromancy die, which fuels the powers. You have a pool of d12s that you can expend instead of a hit die when you cast Sangromancy spells. The number of die equals 1 plus your wizard level. You regain 1 expended Sangromancy die when you finish a short rest, and regain all expended upon doing a long rest. We also get some other features as we level up, but I'll cover them as they come. This only goes up to level 12 as well, I want to mention. Now, we can also grab things like Crimson Lash, which makes a melee weapon I don't love on a build like this, which is more so focused on spell casting. Consumption can fit, which will give us some extra necrotic damage on the enemy, and it continues to damage them over time. Damage over times are a little bit better due to how combat has changed. It's kind of interesting. I personally like to go with Hell's Lash, which will do fire damage over time of 44 of fire damage, or Tasha's Caustic Brew, which also does damage over time. So we have a few optional choices here. The reasons they likely weren't included in Baldur's Gate 3 is the fact that combat's typically over in like 2 to 3 turns. Now, we also get to take another ability here between Arcana, Insight, and Medicine, with Arcana Expertise making sense for a wizard, so we're going to grab that. For the prepared spells, these are solid. The damage over times, again, are okay. They're not it's not like amazing by any means, but it's better than it was in normal base game Baldur's Gate. Now, this at level 3 is when we get to take our Sangromancy spells. So we get our normal spell selection here, and we get our Sangromancy spell selection. So this includes some of the cleric spells, like the Bloodbane rune, which will imbue your weapons with radiant damage. Also, Blood Boil. This is a funny one. It makes the target take damage, but it gets rid of their poison. Interesting. It makes sense, but I wouldn't expend a spell slot on it. We also get options for Consumption, Crimson Lance here, and Somnolence, which is applied to like the Warlock and the Bard. This is basically what Sleep used to be. Sleep is now a new spell. Blood Wisp is my favorite choice here, which will imbue your spells with additional damage. You get 4 wisps that surround you, and they look cool, little VFX there. And Sanguine's Shield, which will give us temporary health, is another good option. Theft of Vitae can give us temporary health by damaging targets, but Sanguine's Shield just has a little bit more utility. This brings us to still one of the best, Scorching Ray, Hold Person. Not much has changed. This is the level 3 spellcaster best combination here. If you got the ability to see in darkness, that works well too. Now we're gonna go and prepare. I like to have both of these on my character at a time. Just again, it's critical hits off of our hold person into Scorching Ray. Really nice. We do get to take another cantrip here, and I guess for this one, Blood Bolt makes the most sense, so I'm going to throw this on. I didn't want to take too many spells from this mod, but since we're using this mod, we have to have the spells, so we can go with them, and I will. So spray of cards will blind targets and does force damage, makes you feel like Gambit. I like it, so I'm going to take it here. And also Spellfire's Flare is also pretty cool, giving us radiant damage as a wizard. Not normally something we have access to, so this is good. This is actually from the Heroes of Faerun new campaign that's based on Baldur's Gate 3 and includes Karlach and Minsk. Pretty cool stuff. Now for the prepared spells, I'd recommend going with the these deck of cards there. And we could also prepare the Sacred Flame or the Spellfire Flare if you want to have a little bit of radiant damage. Now, Alert's not really as good as it used to be. Lucky is still good. And even going down, Warcaster got a nice change. Not only do you get that advantage when saving throws, but you can use your reaction to cast a single target cantrip at a creature that's moving out of your melee range. Pretty good, actually, because this lets you use things not just Shock and Grasp anymore. Tough can also be good for the extra health, as this character needs health. But I personally like to go all the way up and take something like the ability score improvement still on our intelligence, or Constitution if you need a little bit more surviving power. But I do think intelligence, just trying to clear enemies off the board quicker, works well here. Level 5 gives us a very powerful spell with Counterspell. I always like to have this, and Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt's great because it hits in a straight line. Fireball's great too. If you prefer taking Fireball, you could alternatively take that. We also get Extract Iron. I mentioned Gambit earlier. This one makes you feel like Magneto, ripping the iron out of the enemy's blood. This forms a metallic shard that tears its way out. This sounds like it probably feels terrible. So 66 piercing damage. We're going to take it. We're also going to prepare, I would recommend always having Counterspell and Lightning Bolt prepared once we hit level 5 for damage and defensive purposes. Level 6 gives us our hit point maximum. So this gives us 6 more health points. And every time that we level up, we get an additional health point. So by level 12, that's 12 extra health. Pretty nice. We just get the 6 from the previous levels all the way here just at once. Next up, we get to take another spell. We got things like Rhymes Binding Ice, which holds targets in place. I love that spell. And Fireball is nice too. Haste is not as good as it used to be, so we don't really care about haste too much anymore. There's also things like Summon Fey Dog, which is great. In the earlier game, it falls off later on, which gives you concentration to hold, but you get a dog that fights people. That's what the dog's doing. Phantom Steed is also nice. This lets you ride a horse. It's actually a cow, and you don't technically like riding animations. It'll appear, and the Phantom Steed's actually a ghostly one, and then you basically use a spell to summon it back up, and then you're technically riding it. You can get knocked off of it, which will reduce your movement speed, but you do additional damage when you're riding. Doesn't really fit on the theme of this build, so we're going to leave it there, even though I love the theming of a Phantom Steed, like Phantom Ganondorf, spell casting with blood magic, but we'll roll with what we got here. And we'll throw in Fireball there. Now, once we get to level 10, we get another subclass feature that's pretty fun, but nice power spike here because Ice Storm is still... Ice Storm didn't get nerfed really in this setup because ice surfaces are still pretty good. Minor elementals did get nerfed because now they're a concentration, which not amazing to be honest. So we can even go back and take Glyph of Warding because this gives us elemental damage that can hit and choose the damage type. Alternatively, I also like Ralutham's Psychic Lance. What's great about this is it incapacitates the target for 2 turns. Psychic damage also got nerfed, but it's still decently strong. And for the next spell that we'll take, Circle of Scarlet, doing a 10d6 plus 4 necrotic damage, and it's a Constitution save. So most targets will have a decent time with it. Level 8 gives us even more spells here. I mean, again, there's a lot of spells that got nerfed, so it's kind of surprising where some of them stand. Even things like Shadow Blade are now a concentration, but we can even go with Storm Sphere to create difficult terrain and do a bit of extra damage. The animated armor's kind of nice around this level too. Vitriolic Sphere gives us a acid damage, and there's not a lot of good acid damage spells, so I'm going to take that. There's also the Summon Aberration too, which can be kind of fun to mess around with, but I think we'll take the Vitriolic Sphere and the Glyph of Warding, and we'll prepare the following spells. Ice Storm's always nice to have on. And for the next ability score, or next feat, ability score improvement, still good. Feat, Lucky is amazing. Mage Slayer is a little bit different now. If you damage a creature that's concentrating, they get disadvantage on the concentration. If you fail an Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma saving throw, you can then choose to succeed instead. I also want to mention, there is a ton of feats included with this mod. So many. I'm going to do a future video breaking down all the feats that are added in with this mod, so you can stay tuned for that, but there's a lot of stuff here. Now, I would just typically recommend still increasing our intelligence. Hitting with spells is important, and making sure that we're as good as possible at that is also important. And you're going to see at level 12, we do get a fun ability. Level 9, this lets us take Cone of Cold, one of my favorite spells. Conjure Elemental, nerfed, because Chilled from the Elemental is not as strong as it used to be, and it's a concentration as well. I still like it, but I do think that Hold Monster actually gets the edge for the better spell. And we actually, at level 5, get access to some of the best ones with Steel Wind Strike. We'll get to that after. Actually, you know what? We're taking Steel Wind Strike. Hard not to take a 60, 10 of force damage that hits 5 targets and does attack rolls against them. It's a pretty good spell. It's a little bit better in a wizard, or a warlock, but we'll still take it. We'll take Theft of Vitae there. We don't really need it, but you could take one of the other spells. There's nothing super necessary for us at that point. Level 10 will actually give us another subclass feature with the Blood for Blood. When we hit a target with a wizard spell, you can spend a hit point die or a Sangromancy die, roll the die, and deal extra damage equal to the amount that you roll. This is pretty nice, I will admit. I like it. It's good. It just increases your overall damage. Not too complicated, just flat out boosts our damage. We'll take finger guns here because pretty cool. And for this next level, you can take the Summon Dragon. I like the Dragon, although I do want to note, some people have told me that on console, it does like to glitch out a little bit. Also, Danse Macabre is pretty fun. Does require concentration, but 3 ghouls, also fun. I also like Bigby's Hand. This is really fun because it can push enemies around, and it does a little extra force damage, and it's got a punch. There's also Wall of Force, which you can make a wall that enemies can't pass through, and it cannot be damaged. It's interesting, and definitely potential for being powerful in certain instances. Synaptic Static is my favorite. Huge area of effect, psychic damage. A lot to love with that. And even things like Innervation can be nice, although it does require concentration. It can give you a bit of healing. The problem is most level 5 spells, except for Synaptic Static, all require concentration. Every single one of them except Synaptic Static. So with that, we're going to then do Hold Monster. Pretty much all spells require concentration as you get level up higher in this rule set, so something to keep in mind. I also like to prepare the following. Synaptic Static's just too good not to have. And what's funny is that it has 2 different texture atlases, so it has 2 icons, one that's viewable at the 64 by 64 and then one at a larger size. Pretty funny. But level 11. Now, Globe of Invulnerability got a hefty nerf. Create a barrier that creatures and objects within are immune to magical damage for any spell lower than the 5th level. So, yeah, typically, this used to be a really good spell. It's not as good anymore. But what's still good is Chain Lightning. This is still the same spell we know and love. Odaluk's Freezing Sphere, also really good. We got 2 spells here with Fizzband's Platinum Shield, which gives resistance to any damage or elemental damage types, and makes so you basically get evasion too. I don't love it. It's a concentration bonus action. It's kind of good. It's kind of good in a pinch, but not something you really want to use. Tensor's Transformation is cool too. It gives you an extra attack, and you do 2d12 extra damage on melee. Doesn't fit this build too. I mean, it could. It could actually fit this build if you want to do melee. I personally don't love it to play that way, but you can if you'd like to. It actually, the force damage from it's red, so it looks like blood. So if you wanted to go Death Knight route, take that spell. I just think that a wizard is best utilizing their spell casting, despite spells only being 1 per level. Now, I guess we go Blood Rush. This actually gives us bonus action heal, so that's really nice to have in a pinch. And we'll prepare. I like actually Odaluk's Freezing Sphere over that. That's one of the big benefits of playing as a wizard, is getting to be able to spam away with that. Now, level 12, this is what I was talking about. The wizard gets 2 additional level 1 spell slots and 1 level 2, and their intelligence cap becomes 22, and their intelligence increases by 2. So once we hit level up, we'll then have 22 int. So that's pretty good. Also, we can take like Wall of Ice, and we can still take Globe of Invulnerabilities despite being a little bit weaker in its appearance. And we'll prepare the following spells as such. And for the final feat, at this point, we could go with Lucky, or since we really do need to survive, Constitution. And that's the cheek dress. It's from Expedition 33 DLC, but it's also from the Queen's Garments from Skirby. One of the biggest issues that this class runs into, the wizard in particular, is that no shield proficiency is removed from the half-elf and the human. So this makes things tricky because then we have a very low armor class. Even with mage armor, this is only bringing it up to 30. So that is something to keep in mind. But going over gear, Hood of the Weave will give us a bonus to our spell save DC. Since we can't really abuse some of the other tactics that we previously could because we don't have late armor proficiency, we are stuck with that. But the Haste Helmet in the early game is one of the better options for the increased movement. You need that in the early game as a wizard because everything wants you dead really quickly. The Hat of Fire Acuity and the Storm Science Hat are still some of the best though. I guess the very best item would be the Hat of Fire Acuity, which gives you Arcane Acuity when you cast Scorching Rays, which, proc that really easily. It's one of the most overpowered items in the game. Cloak of Protection, again, we need every little bit of survivability that we can get. You can also use the Cloak of Displacement to stop enemies from attacking you by giving them disadvantage. Robe of the Weave is the best late game item. This will give us extra armor class, and it also helps with when we succeed a saving throw, we get a little healing. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that the early game best options is Protecty Sparks Wall with the Jolt Shooter stat, or with the Jolt Jolty Sparkly Staff, because this is the only way to get our armor class up higher. But as we continue later on in the game, this is good, the Robe of the Weave, and also the like Potent Robe, even though this is more so charisma based, gives us +1 AC in the earlier part of the game when you normally don't have armor like that. And I'm actually going to say, just because this build is focused on like being like a Blood Death Knight type caster, we use the Hellisk Armor because this gives us heavy armor proficiency, solving our issue of 17 AC with 24 AC. Yeah, this is kind of a necessity later on in the game to make it so that you don't die every time that you get hit with a fart. We'll also grab the Gloves of the Belligerent Skies here. This will give us thunder, lightning, and radiant damage. We'll apply reverberation, which you can actually get the enemy to end up dropping and falling, and we can proc this really easily with a certain staff that gives us lightning charges. Also, the staff that you can get at the start of the game, the Spell Sparkler. I also have the Evasive Shoes for +1 AC as well, because, again, everything we can get to help out with that matters. The Boots of Stormy Clamor work, but we already got Reverberation from our gloves, so we'll leave it at that. I also got the Amulet of Greater Health, which we could take our Constitution up a single point higher. I would have put it at 22, which gives us a bit of health to work with, because this class does get a bit extra. It's 122 health, so we're not going to die immediately, just very likely soon. I like to actually use the Radiating Orb style gear here as well. So Callous Glow Ring, we can take off the armor protection with the Coruscation Ring. This will apply Radiating Orbs on enemies and additional radiant damage, which is nice. You could even go crazier if you wanted to and then use the Luminous Gloves and then put on something like the Boots of Stormy Clamor. The only reason I'm going to recommend this combination is this puts more conditions on the enemy and it actually procs off of this gear. And the only reason I'm going to actually recommend this in the first place is this rule set from the 2024 Players Handbook All-In-One Beyond is kind of brutal to the players. So anything that can help, since we don't have a shield, we got to use every single bit that we have. Now, we could, if you wanted to use a summon, you could use a Staff of Spell Power to summon in your summon. But the best is still going to be Mark Heshker because it's a really good staff that, yeah, I guess you can use Kreska's Favor. So that's something. I think this mod may have removed the ability to use it. The Staff of Cherished Necromancy isn't really even that amazing because even with the Life Essence Harvest, it doesn't really apply to some of our spells here as their evocation. I guess this staff is still really strong though because the Arcane Battery is obviously really good. That just means you can do 2 Odalix Freezing Spheres. Despite losing on the Chain Lightning, Kreska's Favor, that will give us the Bolts of Doom. It's actually probably a good thing I swapped off since we don't have that extra lightning damage. We still can do some pretty crazy stuff though. We're going to do it. We're going to use the free casting since, yeah, we want that. We're going to use the Odalix Freezing Sphere to start. I really like the spell, especially when thrown into the enemy backline. You can create difficult terrain for them, or it's typically best to hit as many targets as possible, but the surface is a big deal. They failed a counterspell that would have been devastating if that didn't apply. We also get the Blood for Blood now. This is something you need to scout out if it's actually worth applying to the target that you're using it against, because something like Fist Grassley, this would be worth using. Fist Noodleman is right there on the ground, so he's actually still alive. We could use the Blood for Blood. This doesn't use a reaction, but it's going to apply one of these die. You can use a hit point die, or you can use, it depends what type of hit point die I guess you want. 1d12 or 1d6 version, and that was enough to pop him, so that was good. And we took out a few other targets with that. Now, again, even though I've hasted my character, you can only do hasted actions. So that means we can do like a ranged attack or a melee attack. We can't do 2 spells per turn. There's actually a block, 1 turn, 1 spell, which makes this really brutal, to be honest, because that's where a lot of power comes from. So you could go ahead and do something like the Illithid abilities, which you can actually, oh, we got hit with a crit. You can actually go ahead and use something like your Mind Blast if you get the bonus action version of that, as it's got a huge range. It can sometimes just be really nice to take out multiple people all at once or stun them too. And then you get the hasted action, which you can attack with, and their stunts, they have disadvantage, which were not very strong, but that was enough to crit and take them out. Another thing is, I would love to be able to blast away right here with Synaptic Static, but too bad my teammates are in the way of the friendly fire. I can't do that. But I can go ahead with like a Lightning Bolt, and Upcasted Lightning Bolt is actually one of the better spells, actually, I found from this update, because a lot of them got nerfed. This is still a very large hitting attack. You can sometimes hit targets that are, oh, that didn't hit him. But it took out 1 target, I guess. That's not a bad use of our single action that we get per turn. This target's kind of low on health, so I will try the hasted attack. Normally, yeah, oh, we got lucky. It was that 2 extra damage that came from Radiant that helped put us over the edge. But yeah, I mean, you do have some other bonus action abilities you could use. There's, yeah, it's kind of rough. I guess you could use like Mind Sanctuary even got a bit of a change too, where Mind Sanctuary is not even like that good anymore. Oh, lovely. All right, well, that broke our haste, but now we're back. So I guess there's targets to the backside there. Chain Lightning, we're going to use it. We need every offensive firepower that we can get. There's no other targets there, unfortunately. But the funny thing is, with the one spell per one turn, one spell, this means even though we have the ability to use our bonus actions and actions interchangeably in this bubble here with the Mind Sanctuary here, we still can't actually cast another spell per turn. So yeah, you really have to rely on your Lithid abilities like Black Hole and things like that, because otherwise you don't really have too many fun or powerful options, and especially so for bonus action on a wizard. I just used Theft of Vitae there, which Shadowheart actually just attacked that target, and I was able to steal a bit of extra health from them. What's funny though is that whenever we use that, oh, there we go, we got the within the Mind Sanctuary again. So it says we can use actions and bonus actions interchangeably. Doesn't actually truly apply this way, but we do have Black Hole again, so we can recast Black Hole. It's great because it groups enemies up and it's a bonus action, so this lets us get a lot more value out of our attacks, because then we can go ahead with laying down like a Circle of Scarlet here, which will do a pretty respectable amount of damage. This does have a large area of effect. We can also use things like the Relic from Psychic Lance if there's a single target. So we do have some options in terms of combat, but Steel Wind Strike, when in doubt, this is an amazing spell. There's only 2 targets that I can possibly use, or I guess there's a third. Never mind, I left the bubble and it took away all my abilities, even my reaction for whatever reason. I don't know, there are some issues that do pop up from time to time with this mod, especially with the scale of it. We'll try this again. All right, Black Hole to pull everyone to the center here as a bonus action, and don't walk to lose the bonus action. And then we're gonna follow this up with the Steel Wind Strike. This is a crazy powerful spell. It's actually kind of balancing out everything else because this spell is nuts. And we also got Blood for Blood there. If you didn't finish off a target, you just cast that. And we actually didn't finish off a target. Womp womp. I don't have haste anymore, so I can't actually hit them with that. I can't even use Blood Rush because it's 1 turn, 1 spell. I will show Blood Bolt though, the cantrip that kind of fits on here. And we got lucky and got the finisher, and that gave us 14 temporary health. So yeah, the Sangromancer Wizard. A lot of the classes kind of struggle because there's a lot of overpowered things we got used to in Baldur's Gate 3, but that is the D&D Player's Handbook 2024 All-In-One Beyond by Yoonmoonsik. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed, and I hope you guys all have a great day.